Hi everyone, my name is James. Welcome to Kingsfine Woodworking. Today the video we have put together for you and the sequence of events that follow it are all very special to me and my family. As many of you may know, my father-in-law is the one who taught me woodworking. I met my wife in high school and we got married way back in 1985. Right away I knew that Cecil, my father-in-law, would be my new favorite person. He was the smartest person I had ever met, and even today with many years of advanced education behind me, that hasn't changed. That's probably what made him so good at woodworking. He was an engineer with advanced degrees and had worked all over the world. I'm very lucky that he chose to settle here, or I would have never met my wife, who is of course the most important person in the world. Right away he started teaching me woodworking, all about the tools, how to maintain them, how to make jigs and fixtures. He taught me about wood, how to make joints, and about different kinds of wood. He would take me with him to the lumberyard, and it was one of the most amazing places. Years later, even after I had my woodworking business going and I was making advanced projects, I always came to him when I got stuck or couldn't figure something out. He always knew the answer. He worked in the wood shop I built until he was well into his 90s, but sadly, he is no longer with us today. One of the things we talked about building, but never got around to it, was a workbench. Not just a table, but a genuine woodworking bench. I wish we had, but as time passed, it just never happened. When I heard the tree in the front yard had to come down, I knew right away that I had to build a woodworking bench from that tree. So we got a sawmill, and we're doing just that. I decided that this would be nice to document so that everyone could share the journey. That tree had meant a lot to him. He fed squirrels in that tree almost every day for 40 years. But as with all things, the tree's time has come to an end. Today the tree is standing for the last time in its 70-year reign over the front yard. It was planted by the city in the 1950s, not long after the house was built, but long before my time. We're going to finish a 10-inch thick cookie and turn it into a piece of furniture. And then we're going to count the rings. We'll mark the important events in our family's lives on those rings, not only when my wife and I were born, but when we were married, and also when all 5 of our daughters were born, along with all the other significant events the tree has been around for. If you want to keep up with the videos that are going to be following out of this, it would be great if you could subscribe to our channel. There's a link down below, and there's a notification bell you can press so that you get notified when our new videos come out. We would really appreciate it. That's the one thing that helps our channel grow. One of the first videos coming out from this is a wood drying kiln. This comes out next week, a week from today, and it's a wood drying kiln that we have built. It's basically all simple off-the-shelf type products that you can buy, put it together. It's a very efficient kiln. It works every bit as good as a $10,000 or $20,000 kiln that you can buy, but you can do it for a tiny fraction of that amount of money. And if you've ever thought about cutting down a tree or cutting up some boards and drying them on your own in the kiln, you can follow along step by step with this, and it will be very easy for you to do. We will be drying all of the lumber from this tree in that kiln, and of course we'll be making the woodworking bench and the cookie and many other projects from the tree, and each of those will be videos, and you can follow along and see everything that's happened. So we were lucky to some extent that the city was the one who planted the tree, because the city came out for free and took the tree down, and they were kind enough to leave the rest of it for me to cut up and make the furniture with. The reason I had them take a lot of these smaller pieces, lesser limbs away, is because of the reason the tree died. Actually, was because of this beetle. It was infested with a beetle called the banded ash borer. This beetle infests basically dead or stressed, dying trees, and really just the phloem and the sapwood. It doesn't really go to the heartwood at all, and it won't go into healthy trees, and I won't really get into any wood that's already been kiln dried or sterilized. So it just infests trees that are in situations like this. But all of the sapwood, or a lot of it, was destroyed, and of course the smaller diameter logs that you see there that are coming off of it were mostly sapwood. There's a very small core of heartwood in the middle, and so they're full of bore holes, and they really have no value, no use to become furniture at that point. I suppose some of them could be filled, the holes, but we decided there was plenty of lumber left that was just heartwood, and that's what we're going to focus on. So just a few minutes left for this big tree to stand. This guy is taking the big log down for us here. And this is what we're going to get the majority of the furniture out of course. And the pieces on the ground as well. Those were big enough for us to keep. They had a significant amount of heartwood in them. And the city actually worked very efficiently. I think it just took them a couple of hours to take the whole thing down. Maybe 3 hours. I'm not really sure. I guess I didn't time it, but it was very brief. It was just the first part of the day. And there it is. He's going to take the trunk down to ground level, and they're going to come back in a couple of weeks and grind the stump out. But we told him we'd keep this bottom trunk part here. One of my daughters wants to carve that into a seat. So we'll see what she can do with that. I think she'll have to carve away some of the sapwood because it's got some Beetle bore holes in it. But it doesn't look like it here on video now that I'm editing it, but it's pretty substantial. It's about 3 feet in diameter. In fact, even when he had it cut off, the thing was so heavy it couldn't be moved in any easy way, so he had to use his truck to pick it up and make sure that it wasn't actually still physically attached to the ground. And it wasn't. He did a pretty good job of sawing that there. These guys were much more skilled at using the chainsaw than we were. We've used chainsaws quite a bit, I have, in my life, cutting up various things, but they're still better. All right, so this is the bandsaw mill that we talked about. And I'm just going to briefly show some images of us putting it together. We did decide to get a 36-inch mill so that we can absolutely cut the biggest thing that this tree has to offer, and perhaps in the future more trees will come our way. Who knows, if we have a lot of fun doing it. And actually we did have a lot of fun doing it. But we're just going to do kind of a quick overview on this. This isn't really a review or anything like that. This is just a bandsaw mill that we found on Amazon that was 36 inches wide, that was reasonably affordable and had really good reviews. I thought we'd give it a shot. It has a Honda motor. Everything else in it is all steel, that's bolted together. So I didn't really see anything major that could happen to it or go wrong with it. If anything gets bent or anything like that, we could straighten it. The Honda motor is pretty reliable. So I think it's a 25 horsepower Honda motor. And we basically put the whole thing together in just a few hours and gave it a test cut. And it actually just cut like butter right through that hardwood. No problem at all. Real simple. We had a short board here that we were testing on, or short log, that we were testing on. It didn't quite span from one segment to the next on the mill. So I had to put up a board there to act as a backer for this to go against, and some boards on bottom to carry the weight of it. But we still used the locking mechanism of the mill to hold it in place. And it went through nice and easy. Pretty cool. You can probably see some of those bore holes in there because this is all sapwood right here that you're looking at. And even though it was just a test, we were just going to cut, a cut or two. It was just so much fun, and it takes like 3 seconds or 4 seconds to make a cut. It's walking speed, and it flies right through it. So we just had fun. We just kept cutting. We pretended like we were making, slabs that would be useful, but they weren't. They're still full of bore holes at this point. We're starting to get into the heartwood there, and we cut off a big chunk from this side, getting through the sapwood and into heartwood. So it'll be a much better looking piece when we separate it. And yeah, that's much nicer. No bore holes in that. And so this wood is hackberry. I meant to mention that earlier and I forgot to mention it, but it's hackberry. And we looked up stuff about hackberry because I've never worked with hackberry before, and it seems to be a pretty good wood. And my daughter actually went out and got this on her own. She decided that she wanted to have this saw. She's been talking about it for a long time, and so she wasn't playing. She did. She went out and she got it. So she's opening it here and checking it out. Apparently that was useless, and I think she loves it. It's a pretty big saw.
This is the only saw I'm going to use from now on.
Well, you heard it. Apparently that's the only saw she's going to use from now on, and so she fired it up and ran right out to try to cut the thickest piece of wood she could grab in a hurry. She even let her boyfriend have a shot at it too. It's a pretty good saw. I think it'll come in handy for doing some cross-cutting of some of the thicker pieces that we're making, and it'll be especially handy for chopping off the ends of that big woodworking bench. With the mill together and tested and working great, it's time to cut this log into pieces and get it on that sawmill and start cutting up our lumber. The first order of business was to try to chop this off here. This is going to be, we're going to make a big like a sort of a cookie, I suppose. It's going to be like maybe a three-legged cookie at the bottom, and the top will be just a big flat disc. And my daughter wants to, one of my other daughters wants to make a coffee table out of this and see what she thinks of that. Maybe this will be the one that we're going to mark up the rings on. So we had to get a big bar for the chainsaw. It's a 52-inch bar. We just wanted to kind of try to go through this in one neat, clean, even pass so that it sat nice and neat. We can probably turn it back right side up or upside down, whatever, on the sawmill and clean it up and make it even straighter if need be, but I thought we'd start straight and see if that helped out. And this was a slow cut. I think it probably took 10 minutes to get all the way through this, start to finish. But I suppose that's not too bad. We only had a few such cuts to make, so the rest of it fit on the mill pretty nicely. I just wanted to mention that we are on Facebook, and if you happen to be on Facebook, we have a community called King's Fine Woodworking Community, and that's a place where you could join. It's for woodworkers only, and you can ask questions, you can get answers by expert woodworkers, you can share your work, you can see the work that others have done. It's just kind of a neat place to collab. I'll put a link to that group on the in the description of the video down below, so if you're interested, check it out. So now Ryan is cutting off the top part of this cookie. I guess if you could call it that. It's awfully thick, but that's what's going to be turned into a coffee table at some point, and I'm sure it'll be a lot thinner and when it gets finally trimmed down on the mill. But that looks pretty cool. Not too much internal checking. Whatever we see can be easily filled or remedied, but it looks pretty good. All right, so here we go. We're going to take that big beast of a log, and it was pretty easy with some tools to roll that down to the gutter. Easier than I thought it would be. And we got some hooks also on Amazon so that we could lift it with a forklift. We don't really have any actually log handling materials, but the forklift worked fantastic. Picked these things up like it was no problem and got them over there and set them right on the mill for us. It was really pretty straightforward. And the hooks are even pretty affordable too. I think it's just a couple $100 for a pair of hooks, and big heavy-duty straps, like 30,000 pound rated straps, and they were like $20 on Amazon, so they're not too bad. But it works pretty good. Swings a little bit, so you can't start or stop too fast, but it's pretty easy to maneuver this and get your logs on the mill with it. If you have a forklift and you don't have any other big log handling equipment, you don't really need it. So as you can see here, we've moved the mill over to the street as opposed to the driveway. I think it's going to be easier for us to sweep up all the sawdust, and this thing sure does make a lot of sawdust. And the main thing about the mill is you just get it level, nice and level with the ground, and that's really easy to do. You just take an 8-foot long level, and it's got 6 different jack stands on it. I think all mills pretty much do. And you just crank them up or down however they need to be done in order to get this piece perfectly level. Once it's nice and level, then everything is square, everything is level, and the cuts come out perfectly. Manipulating the log once it is on the mill, it takes a little bit more effort. I know they make much more expensive mills, maybe 20 times the price of this mill, that have automatic, hydraulic log handling capabilities that'll flip and roll the log and all kinds of fancy stuff. And we didn't get any of that, but we've got big cant hooks, and they're like $50 for a cant hook. And with that, you can pretty much rotate a log no matter how much it weighs. They're pretty remarkable little tools. And these little quick clamps that lock the log into place, they're also pretty ingenious little devices. I like these a lot. I'm sure if you're familiar with mills, then this is common to you, but it's all kind of new to me, and I was just enjoying it and having a lot of fun with it and seeing how all these things worked. Once again, I hope you take the time to subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. It's the only way that the channel grows, and in reality, about 80 or 90% of all the people that watch our videos aren't even subscribed. So if it isn't too much trouble and you click that subscribe button, we would definitely appreciate it. And next week, the video coming out is something, whether you subscribe or not, I hope you come back to check it out. It's so much fun. I had a lot of fun making that video. We built a wood drying kiln, and it's pretty remarkable. It's kind of an evolutionary process because we've done things like that in the past and had good success, and this is just an evolution of design. A ton of research went into it, and it's just a highly efficient wood firing kiln. It works, or wood drying kiln. It works every bit as good as a super high dollar kiln, but just a tiny fraction of the cost. And I think it's something that's going to change the way that a lot of woodworkers approach and do woodworking. So many people have access to logs that you could even take and cut up to a certain size on your bandsaw into some boards or some planks, or you have access to some air-dried lumber, and none of this is really any good at all unless you can kiln dry it. If it doesn't get kiln dried, truthfully, it's just not going to work for lumber. But this is a way that everybody, even on really small scale, can get and dry some lumber. And with kiln dried lumber, you now can make furniture, stuff that will last forever, stuff that will be something that you made that cost you virtually nothing. You can get logs for free. People on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace are always giving away logs or trees that they've had cut down in the yard. They just want somebody to come and haul them away. You don't even need to get a bandsaw mill. You can even go get slightly bigger logs, and you can cut them up with an Alaskan chainsaw mill. They're really cheap. You can pick one up for $100 on Amazon, and you can cut perfectly acceptable logs. They're a tiny bit rougher than this, but they'll work just fine. And having that and having access to something where you can kiln dry your wood really opens up a lot of possibilities. It's a way to make money. In addition to that, your woodworking now will suddenly start costing you a lot less. It's just a whole avenue of woodworking to explore that so many of us haven't, and a lot of us do woodworking because it's fun. We like to do things, we like to build things, we like to make things, we like to try new stuff. That's why we get into woodworking to begin with. People who do this are constructive, they like to be constructive, do things with their hands, make things, and having a mill is just an extension of that. It's a way to come full circle with your woodworking from beginning to end. It's the whole cycle from raw lumber from a tree all the way to furniture. Many of us spend thousands of dollars on tools. Most of us have never even thought that you could have a kiln and kiln dry your own lumber for just a few $100s. It's something that could fit tiny in the corner of your garage or on a back patio or something like that. And every once in a while you could come across a log and turn that into a beautiful piece of furniture. I think a lot of people would go for that, and I'm definitely going to show you exactly how to do it from start to finish in the next video. So today we're out front working, and the shop dogs had to come with us, but they're not exactly happy. It really isn't that cold, but they definitely needed to snuggle up in order to watch us work. Okay, so back to the milling. We got the log flipped and we're about to make our second cut, but I've got to get the board straight first, and I can't make a deep enough cut all at once because I think we're limited to about 7 inches on this mill. I didn't know they had that limitation, but apparently they all seem to have some sort of limitation like that. They don't want you to cut down too thick all at once. Maybe the blade can't handle the weight, not real sure. So we made these cuts and cut it off in steps. That seems to be the way to do it. I don't know if there's a better technique for that, but that's what we did. And then we can go ahead and make our next cut to remove the sapwood and get down to the heartwood. Remember, the sapwood ordinarily for most wood would be fine, and you would keep it and use it and make furniture with that, but we had to get rid of it because it did have the bore holes from the Beetles. And now for the final leg of this big cant. Here too, we're going to make this in a couple of passes to get down through all of the sapwood. The first pass will be a light pass in the middle and a little bit thicker on the two ends. And that too, of course, unfortunately has to be discarded. And we still have a good chunk of sapwood left that had the Beetle boring holes in it, which we got rid of. To there. And with that we have our cant. So this came from the center of the tree, and the wood is beautiful. I really do like this hackberry. So all the results that I found online, even though I haven't worked with it, I did do extensive research and we decided for sure we're going to go for it. but it says it's a great furniture wood. So we have a cant that's between 17 and 18 inches square, which is really good size. So what we decided to do is to cut it into a couple of 6-inch slabs. Probably going to build a traditional style Rubo bench, which oftentimes was made of just 2 boards on the top, on the workbench surface, 2 5-inch thick boards. We're doing them at 6 because we're going to have to finish them up. They're going to shrink a little bit, and then we're going to have to finish them up, dress them down to size a bit. So, and they're almost 18 inches wide, but we'll probably have them dressed down to around 16. So we'll be looking at a bench top that's around 5 inches thick and around 32 inches wide, and this is 7 feet long. So that's going to be the main bench top for the woodworking bench that we are building. Now I know those pieces will take a long time to kiln dry. I've done the math, and we're looking from 3 to 6 months in the kiln for these big ones, so I might take these to a vacuum kiln. I could certainly wait the time. I don't think that would be too much of an issue. In fact, we may try that, and I'll put a probe in it and test it for moisture. But if it ends up taking what seems to be too long, or I'll also talk to some experts about time for something this thick, we might just take it to a vacuum kiln place and have it done pretty quickly. I think they can do it there in just like a week. So it makes a big difference if you can put the whole thing under practically no pressure. And those were far too big to carry, so it was even hard work to get it moved off onto the forks and go get it stacked up. So that's the second one, and we have the first one already in place over there. And they're just amazing. I love it. I think this is going to be a super fantastic bench. I know it's going to be something my father-in-law would have been proud of. We're gonna make this a beautiful piece of furniture, even though we're going to use it for woodworking. I kind of like to do that anyway. Most of the things that I use for woodworking, I kind of like to make them out of nice wood, or make them, very pretty, something that's enjoyable, just strictly because I'm going to be working with it all day. So I would rather have something that looks nice and that I can appreciate and enjoy working on, rather than something rough. I know different people have different opinions on shop furniture and shop jigs and fixtures and stuff like that, and sometimes they just make it out of the cheapest stuff. But I tend to be different, and I like to practice on nice woods for the shop because I keep them and I have to deal with them every day, so I might as well enjoy them. Okay, so this is the last bit we're going to cut from this tree, or from this slab, from this section. And we're going to cut it in half into 2 slabs. One's 2 inches thick, the other one's about 2.5. We'll dry those here too, obviously. And we did end up cutting everything else off camera. I don't think you wanted to see us cut slabs all day. And we're putting anchor seal on it. We chose the red anchor seal for some weird reason. It goes on pink, but it dries bright red. So it's pretty obvious where you put it. And there is our lumber from this tree. Quite a bit of lumber. We've got the big heavy cants. I've got some big 6x6 squares for the legs. I've got a lot of 8/4 stock, a little bit of 4/4 stock, and some 6/4 stock. I've got some big cookies. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Got to get a lot of really good projects out of these. I'm going to really enjoy making it, and I hope you guys are there for the ride. So, thanks for watching.